They thought she was just arm candy that had expired. A pretty face from the wrong side of town who had gotten lucky for a decade, but whose usefulness had finally run out. Alexander Hastings and his venomous family did not just divorce Emma, they humiliated her. They had security escort her out of the penthouse she had decorated, laughing as she left with nothing but a single suitcase and the clothes she had bought with her own money before the marriage. But they made one catastrophic miscalculation. They never bothered to ask about the trust fund Emma had walked away from at 19. They never researched the family name she had abandoned to marry for love instead of status. They never thought to Google the signature on their corporate documents, the E. Hastings, who had been signing off on their deals for years. When the judge asked Emma to state her full legal name for the record, the silence that followed did not just freeze the courtroom. It detonated a bomb that would leave the Hastings family in ruins. Because Emma was not poor, she had just been pretending. And now she was done pretending. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Hastings penthouse on Central Park West as Emma stood in the marble foyer, her hands shaking. "It's for the best, Emma," Alexander said, not even looking up from his phone. He was texting someone, probably Victoria, the 24-year-old fashion blogger he had been mentoring for the past 8 months. "We've grown apart. You understand." Emma stared at the man she had loved for 10 years. At 42, Alexander was still handsome in that polished, corporate way, expensive haircut, perfect teeth, a smile that could charm investors and crush competitors. She had met him when she was 23 and he was 35, a rising star in commercial real estate. She had fallen hard for his ambition, his confidence, his promises that they had built an empire together. "Alex, please," Emma whispered. "Can we just talk about this? Go to counseling. I know things have been difficult, but—" "There is nothing to talk about." His mother's voice cut through the room like a knife. Victoria Hastings emerged from the living room, martini in hand, looking at Emma with barely concealed disgust. "You've been a suitable companion for Alexander during his building years, but now he needs a wife who fits his station, someone with the right connections, the right breeding." Emma's stomach dropped. "I have been with Alex for 10 years. I supported him when he was starting out. You worked as a waitress when you met," Victoria sneered. "Let's not rewrite history, dear. You were pretty, Alex was smitten, and we tolerated it. But Alexander is about to close the biggest deal of his career, the merger with Blackstone Properties. He needs a wife who can navigate that world. She waved her hand dismissively. "You're a liability." "I have been navigating that world for years." Emma's voice rose. "I have been hosting your dinner parties, managing the foundations, sitting on charity boards." "Under our name," Alexander finally looked at her. "Let's be honest, Emma. Without the Hastings name, what are you? You dropped out of some no-name college. You have no family, no connections, no money of your own. You've been living off my success for a decade." The cruelty was breathtaking. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. "The prenup is clear," Alexander continued, pulling out an envelope. "You get nothing. Well, not nothing. I am giving you $25,000 as a gesture of goodwill. That's generous, considering you contributed no assets to this marriage." $25,000. After 10 years of marriage. 10 years of organizing his life, entertaining his clients, managing his household, being the perfect wife while he built his empire. Victoria set down her martini. "The lawyers will be here in an hour to finalize everything. I have had Maria pack your personal items, the things you came with. The jewelry, the car, the designer clothes, those belong to the Hastings family. You may take what is yours." Emma looked at the single suitcase by the door. The same battered case she had arrived with 10 years ago, now packed with the handful of items she had owned before becoming Mrs. Alexander Hastings. "You're really doing this," she said softly. "You're just throwing me away." "Oh, do not be dramatic," Victoria scoffed. "You had a good run. Many women would kill for 10 years of luxury. Take the money, find a nice little apartment somewhere, maybe go back to waitressing. You'll be fine. Alexander handed her the envelope. Sign the papers when the lawyers arrive. And Emma, he finally met her eyes. Don't make this messy. You have no leverage here. Fight this and I will make sure you get nothing. Not even the $25,000. Emma took the envelope with trembling hands. She looked at this man she had loved, this family she had tried so hard to please, and felt something inside her shift. The fear, the desperation to salvage this, it was burning away, replaced by something colder, clearer. I need to make a phone call, she said quietly. Make it quick, Victoria said. The lawyers arrive at 6. Emma walked to the bedroom, their bedroom, though it had felt like his for years now, and closed the door. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to a contact she had not called in over a decade. The number was still there, unchanged. Her hand steadied as she dialed. It rang once, twice. Castellano's residence, a crisp, professional voice. This is Emma, she said, her voice stronger now. Emma Castellanos, I need to speak with my father. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Miss Emma, one moment, please. The hold music was Vivaldi. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror across the room. She looked tired, older than 33, like someone who had been slowly erasing herself to fit into someone else's life. Emma, her father's voice, older but still commanding. Is that really you? Hi, Dad, Emma said, and suddenly the tears came. I am sorry I have not called. I know it has been 10 years, 3 months, and 16 days, Ricardo Castellanos said. But who is counting? His voice softened. Where are you, Mija? Are you safe? I am. Emma looked around the opulent bedroom. I am getting divorced. Alex is throwing me out. His family says I am not good enough anymore. They're giving me $25,000 and telling me to leave. Silence on the other end. Then they what? They do not know who I am, Dad. I never told them. I wanted Alex to love me for me, not for your money. So I used Mom's maiden name, Hayes. I pretended I was nobody. And he believed you were nobody, Ricardo said, his voice hardening. This man, this boy, married my daughter, used her for 10 years, and now thinks he can discard her with pocket change. He thinks I am just some waitress who got lucky, Emma said. He has no idea. Does he know about your education, your business degree from Wharton? I told him I dropped out of community college. Your trust fund, your inheritance. I have not touched a penny. It's all still there, like you promised to keep it. Another silence. Then Ricardo Castellanos laughed, a cold, dangerous sound. Emma, my darling daughter, I think it is time we remind the Hastings family who they are dealing with. Do they know you have been signing corporate documents? Emma's blood went cold. What? For the past 7 years, every major acquisition Alexander Hastings has made has required sign-off from E. Hastings. That's how he structured his holding company to avoid certain tax complications. You've been his authorized signatory on everything. Emma's mind raced. Alex had her sign things constantly, documents he claimed were household-related, foundation paperwork, things he said were just formalities. She had trusted him completely. Dad, what are you saying? I am saying that E. Hastings, that is you, Emma, is listed as co-owner on several key properties. Not Alexander, you. My lawyers made sure of that when they reviewed the documents you were signing. You thought you were signing as his wife, but legally, in many cases, you were signing as a principal. Emma stood up, her heart pounding. How is that possible? Because I have been protecting you from the shadows, Mija. When you called me 6 years ago to witness some documents he sent you, remember? You said it was for a foundation. I had my lawyers look at everything. What Alexander thought were simple marital authorizations were actually ownership transfers. He needed your signature to legitimize certain deals for tax purposes. But the way his lawyers structured it, Incompetently, I might add. They made you an owner. Which properties? The Blackstone merger. The flagship building that is the centerpiece of the deal. You own 40% of it. Alexander owns 60%. But here is the beautiful part. You have right of first refusal on any sale or transfer. He cannot sell to Blackstone without your written consent. Emma's knees went weak. She sat back down on the bed. The Blackstone deal is worth $800 million. Yes, her father said, and without your signature it is worth nothing. Emma, when are the lawyers arriving? 6 p.m. in 45 minutes. Don't sign anything. Not the divorce papers, not the settlement, nothing. Tell them you need time to review. I am sending my team. They will be there in 30 minutes. And Emma. Yes. Welcome back to the family. It's time to show your husband what happens when you underestimate a Castellanos. At exactly 6:00 p.m. the doorbell rang. Emma answered it before Victoria could reach the foyer. Two lawyers stood there, Alexander's divorce attorneys, sharp-suited and smug. Behind them, stepping out of the elevator, were three more people. A woman in her 60s in an impeccable Chanel suit. Two men in matching dark suits carrying briefcases. Who are they? Victoria demanded. My attorneys, Emma said calmly. The woman in Chanel stepped forward. Margaret Reeves of Castellanos and Reeves. I represent Ms. Emma Castellanos. She emphasized the last name. Alexander appeared in the foyer. Castellanos, Emma, what are you? My name is Emma Maria Castellanos Hayes, Emma said, her voice clear and strong. Hayes was my mother's maiden name. I used it when we met because I wanted you to love me for myself, not my family's wealth. My father is Ricardo Castellanos. The blood drained from Alexander's face. Even Victoria went pale. Ricardo Castellanos was a legend in real estate, a self-made billionaire who had built an empire in commercial properties across Latin America and the United States. His net worth was estimated at $4.8 billion. He was known for two things: brilliant deals and absolutely destroying anyone who betrayed his family. That's impossible, Victoria whispered. Ricardo Castellanos' daughter is. Me, Emma said. I walked away from my trust fund at 19 because I wanted to make my own way. I met Alex when I was working at that restaurant, not because I needed the money, but because I was trying to understand the world outside my father's empire. I fell in love with you, Alex. I thought you fell in love with me too. Alexander's lawyer stepped forward. This does not change the prenup. Actually, it changes everything, Margaret Reeves said coolly. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Because for the past 7 years, Mr. Hastings has had his wife signing documents making her a co-owner on several properties, including, most significantly, the Blackstone Tower project. Alexander's face went from pale to gray. What? No, those were just authorization forms, standard stuff. Your lawyers were sloppy, Margaret said. The documents you had Mrs. Castellanos Hastings sign were not simple authorizations. They were ownership transfers, structured to give you certain tax advantages. But in doing so, they made your wife a legal owner. She holds 40% of the Blackstone project. You hold 60%. One of Alexander's lawyers grabbed the folder, flipping through it frantically. His face went white. Oh God, he's right. The Series C documents, the restructuring in 2019. These are not authorizations. These are ownership stakes. That's impossible, Alexander shouted. I built that project, it's mine. You built it using documents your wife signed in good faith, believing she was supporting you, Margaret said. But legally, she is an owner. And the Blackstone sale, it requires unanimous consent of all owners. Emma does not consent. The deal closes in 3 days. Alexander was panicking now. If it does not close, I am liable for $50 million in penalties. The financing falls apart. Then I suggest you negotiate with your wife, Margaret said, who, incidentally, also has grounds to contest the prenup on the basis of fraud and unconscionability. You had her signing major financial documents while telling her they were inconsequential. That's misrepresentation. Victoria found her voice. This is extortion. No, Emma said quietly. This is divorce. You wanted to give me $25,000 and send me away. Let's renegotiate. The emergency session took place the next morning in a neutral conference room. Alexander sat with his lawyers, looking like he had not slept. Victoria was beside him, her usual smugness replaced by barely contained rage. Across the table sat Emma, Margaret Reeves, and two more attorneys from Castellanos and Reeves. Let's be clear about the situation, Margaret began. Emma owns 40% of the Blackstone project. The sale cannot proceed without her consent. If the sale does not close by Friday, Mr. Hastings faces $50 million in penalty clauses, his financing collapses, and he will likely be forced into bankruptcy. This is insane, one of Alexander's lawyers said. Our client had no idea. Your client had his wife sign documents he never explained to her, while telling her she was just a housewife with no business sense, Margaret interrupted. That's called fraud. Would you like us to add that to our counterclaims? What do you want? Alexander asked Emma directly, his voice hoarse. Emma met his eyes. For 10 years she had looked at this man with love. Now she felt nothing but cold calculation, the Castellanos family trait she had tried so hard to suppress. I want what I am owed, she said. First, the Blackstone deal. You'll sell your 60% to Blackstone as planned, but my 40%, I am keeping it. I will negotiate my own terms with Blackstone separately. That's $320 million, Victoria shrieked. That's my share of something I legally own, Emma corrected. Second, the penthouse. It's in your name, Alex, but I want $15 million for my contributions to it. I decorated it, I maintained it, I made it the showplace you used to impress clients. That's the market rate for interior design and property management services over 10 years. This is absurd. Third, Emma continued, the art collection. I selected every piece. Half of it is mine. We'll have it appraised and divided. Fourth, you will publicly state that our divorce is by mutual consent, with no fault on either side. You will not speak negatively about me. You will not claim I am a gold digger or that I contributed nothing to your success. And if I refuse, Alexander asked. Then I do not sign the Blackstone consent, Emma said simply. Your deal collapses. You lose everything. And I will still own 40% of a building that you will be forced to sell at fire sale prices to cover your debts. I will buy your share for pennies on the dollar and own the whole thing. The room went silent. Alexander's lead lawyer leaned over and whispered frantically in his ear. The conversation went on for several minutes. Finally, Alexander sat back, his face ashen. Fine, he said, but you sign a confidentiality agreement. No one can know about any of this. No, Emma said, I am done being quiet. Emma, please. You threw me out with a suitcase and $25,000, Emma said, her voice shaking not with fear but with anger. You told me I was nothing, that I had contributed nothing. You humiliated me in front of your mother, in front of your staff. You made me feel worthless. So no, Alex, no confidentiality agreement. The world gets to know exactly who Emma Castellanos is, and exactly what kind of man you are. The settlement took 3 weeks to finalize. During that time the story leaked, as Emma knew it would. But before the public spectacle, there were the private battles. Emma spent the first week after that initial meeting at her father's estate in the Hamptons, surrounded by lawyers and documents. Margaret Reeves had assembled a team of 5 attorneys, each specializing in different aspects of what they were calling the most complex divorce case of the decade. Let's be clear about what we have, Margaret said, spreading documents across the massive dining table that had been converted into a war room. Between 2017 and 2023, Alexander had Emma sign 63 separate documents. He told her they were authorization forms for household accounts, foundation paperwork, and tax documents. She held up a thick stack. 40 of those documents were exactly what he said, routine authorizations, but these 23, she tapped a different pile. These are ownership transfers, stock grants, property deeds, partnership agreements. Alexander's lawyers were trying to structure his empire in a way that avoided certain taxes and liabilities. To do that, they needed a co-owner for various assets. They used Emma. Without telling me what I was actually signing, Emma said bitterly. Exactly. Which gives us multiple legal angles. Fraud, misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary duty. As your husband, he had an obligation to act in your interests. Instead, he used you. One of the younger lawyers looked up from his laptop. The Blackstone Tower is the crown jewel, but there is more. She owns 30% of the parking garage venture in Brooklyn, 20% of the Miami condo project. And this is interesting. She is listed as a 50-50 partner in something called Hastings Capital Ventures. What's that? Emma asked. Margaret flipped through documents. It's his investment fund, the one he uses to invest in startups and other real estate deals. Current assets under management, $120 million. Emma's head spun. I own half of a $120 million fund. You're listed as a general partner, which means yes, you own half, and you have full authority to make investment decisions. Emma thought about all the times Alexander had complained about her not understanding business, all the times he had patted her head and told her not to worry about complicated financial stuff. Meanwhile, he had made her a partner in a 9-figure investment fund. Can we freeze his access to that fund? Emma asked. Margaret smiled. Already done. As co-general partner, you have the right to suspend investment activities pending internal review. I filed the paperwork this morning. Alexander cannot move a dollar without your signature. Emma felt a savage satisfaction. Good. The story broke on page 6 first. Real estate heirs divorce gets complicated. Within 24 hours, it was everywhere. The basic facts were too delicious for the media to ignore. Billionaire divorces wife, thinking she is a nobody, turns out she is worth more than him. But Alexander's PR team tried to control the narrative. They planted stories suggesting Emma had been hiding her wealth to trap him, that she had been spying for her father all along, that she was a gold digger who would deliberately deceive him. The strategy backfired spectacularly. Emma's legal team released a statement. Ms. Castellanos-Hayes used her mother's maiden name because she wanted to be loved for herself, not her family's wealth. She worked as a waitress because she was taking a gap year before starting at Wharton Business School, where she graduated with honors. She supported Mr. Hastings's career for a decade while he built his business. The only deception in this marriage was Mr. Hastings having his wife sign major ownership documents while telling her they were just formalities. They attached copies of Emma's Wharton transcript, her undergraduate degree from Brown, and testimonials from professors describing her as brilliant and one of the most capable students we have ever taught. The narrative flipped overnight. She was never the dumb wife. He was just a blind husband, wrote Jezebel. How Alexander Hastings built his empire on his wife's credentials and signatures, wrote Fortune. The most damaging piece came from a former Hastings employee, a woman named Maria who had been Emma's housekeeper. She gave an interview to the Times describing how she had watched Emma manage complex foundation finances, negotiate with contractors, and host business dinners where she was clearly the smartest person in the room, but Mr. Hastings would always talk over her. She handled everything, Maria said. The household, the entertaining, the foundations, the charity work. She was working 60-hour weeks while he took credit for everything. And when she tried to talk about business, he'd say, Don't worry your pretty head about it. It was painful to watch. The interview went viral. Don't worry your pretty head started trending, with thousands of women sharing stories of being patronized by partners who simultaneously relied on their labor. Alexander's legal team came back with a desperate offer. $75 million, full stop, in exchange for Emma's signature on the Blackstone deal and a complete release of all claims. Emma's team did not even pretend to consider it. Counteroffer, Margaret said. $400 million cash, plus she keeps her ownership stakes in Hastings Capital Ventures and the Miami project. She sells her Blackstone stake directly to Blackstone for market value, and Alexander publicly acknowledges her contributions to his business success. He'll never agree to that, Alexander's lawyer sputtered over the conference call. Then he loses everything, Margaret said simply. The Blackstone deal collapses Friday at 5 p.m. Your client pays $50 million in penalties. His financing evaporates. His company goes into bankruptcy. Emma buys his assets at liquidation prices. She ends up with everything anyway, but he gets nothing. This is extortion. No, this is divorce, Emma said, speaking for the first time on the call. You wanted to give me $25,000 for a decade of my life. Now you get to pay what I am actually worth. The call ended in shouting. But behind the scenes, Alexander was panicking. His board of directors was threatening to remove him if the Blackstone deal fell through. His biggest investors were demanding answers about the ownership structure of his assets. Banks were getting nervous about loans they had extended based on his personal guarantees. Victoria Hastings called Emma directly, a violation of the lawyer's instructions. You're destroying him, Victoria hissed. You're destroying the family. Is that what you want? Revenge. I want what I earned, Emma said calmly. I gave your son a decade of my life. I signed documents that made his success possible. I managed his household, entertained his clients, and made him look good in rooms where he was the least impressive person present. And when he was done using me, he tried to throw me away like trash. So yes, Victoria, I am taking what is mine. If that destroys your family, you should have thought about that before you treated me like I was worthless. He'll fight you to the bitter end. Then he will lose everything, Emma interrupted. I have lawyers, I have money. I have truth on my side. What does he have? A crumbling business and a reputation for treating his wife like property. How do you think that plays out, Victoria? Victoria hung up without answering. On Thursday, one day before the Blackstone deadline, Alexander showed up at Emma's father's estate. Security called Emma before letting him through the gates. There is a very agitated Mr. Hastings here to see you, Miss Emma. Should we send him away? Emma thought about it, then, no, let him in, but have security stay close. Alexander looked terrible. His expensive suit was rumpled, his hair uncombed, his eyes red-rimmed. He'd aged a decade in 2 weeks. They sat in the garden, the same place where Emma's mother used to tend roses. Security was visible in the background. I am sorry, Alexander said immediately. Emma, I am so sorry for everything, for how I treated you, for what I said, for. Stop, Emma said. You're not sorry for hurting me. You're sorry for the consequences. There is a difference. That's not fair. Isn't it? Emma looked at him. Alex, when did you realize I was not the stupid waitress you thought I was? When you found out who my father was? When you saw my degrees? Or when your lawyers told you I owned half your empire? He could not meet her eyes. That's what I thought, Emma said. You do not see me as a person, Alex. You never did. I was a trophy when you needed one. I was free labor when you needed that. I was a signature on documents when you needed that. But I was never a partner. I was never your equal. I was an idiot, Alexander said. I did not appreciate what I had. But Emma, we could. No, Emma said firmly. We could not. This marriage is over. The only question is whether you walk away with something or with nothing. The board is pushing me to settle, Alexander admitted. They say if the Blackstone deal does not close, they will remove me as CEO. The banks are calling in their loans. Emma, I will lose everything. Yes, Emma said, you will, unless you take the deal on the table. $400 million, that's everything I have. No, that is everything you have access to in liquid assets. You'll still have your company if you can keep it. You'll still have your name for whatever that is worth now. And you will have the lesson that you cannot treat people as disposable. Alexander put his head in his hands. I never meant for it to end like this. How did you mean for it to end? Emma asked. You threw me out with a suitcase, Alex. You told me I was nothing. Did you think I had just accept that? Did you think I had disappear quietly? I do not know what I thought. You thought I was powerless, Emma said. That's your mistake. Not underestimating my wealth, underestimating me. If I had really been the waitress you thought I was, I had still deserved better than what you gave me. The fact that I am Ricardo Castellanos' daughter just means I have the resources to fight back. But any woman in my position deserves justice, Alex. Any woman who gives a decade of her life to supporting a partner's success deserves recognition and compensation, not $25,000 and a pat on the head. She stood up. You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow to accept the settlement. After that, I let the Blackstone deal die, and I will see you in bankruptcy court. Emma, please. Goodbye, Alexander. She walked away, leaving him sitting in her mother's garden, finally understanding what he had lost. At 4:47 p.m. on Friday, 13 minutes before the Blackstone deadline, Alexander's lawyers sent the signed settlement agreement. Emma read through it carefully, Margaret beside her before signing. The terms were exactly what she had demanded. $400 million cash payment, structured over 3 years for tax purposes. Emma retains her ownership stakes in Hastings Capital Ventures, 50%, and the Miami project, 20%. Emma sells her Blackstone stake directly to Blackstone for $340 million, closing simultaneously with Alexander's sale. Alexander issues a public statement acknowledging Emma's contributions. No confidentiality agreement. Complete release of all claims. Total value to Emma, approximately $770 million, plus ongoing income from her retained investments. Sign it, Emma said. Margaret added Emma's signature, then scanned and sent the documents. At 4:52 p.m., the Blackstone deal closed. At 4:53 p.m., wire transfers began flowing into accounts held by Castellanos and Reeves on Emma's behalf. At 4:55 p.m., Alexander's lawyer called. It's done, he said heavily. Mr. Hastings requests that you not speak to the press. I will speak to whomever I want, Emma said. He had his chance for a confidentiality agreement. He turned it down, remember. Ms. Castellanos, please. He's lost almost everything. He lost what he tried to steal from me, Emma corrected. He kept everything that was legitimately his. That's more than fair. She hung up and looked at Margaret. Is it really over? The divorce? Yes. The wire transfers should complete by Monday. You're officially one of the wealthiest women in America. Emma felt, not triumph exactly, relief maybe, or just exhaustion. What now? Margaret asked. Now, Emma said, I figure out who I am when I am not trying to be small enough for someone else's comfort. Alexander's statement was released that evening through his PR firm. After 10 years of marriage, Emma and I have decided to part ways. I want to publicly acknowledge the significant contributions Emma made to my success. She was a partner in every sense of the word, and I failed to recognize and honor that partnership. I wish her every happiness in the future. Alexander Hastings. It was carefully worded, probably written by lawyers, but it was enough. Emma did not release a statement. She did not need to. The settlement numbers leaked within days, as such things always did, and the media did the rest. Waitress wife secretly billionaire heiress, read the New York Post headline. The tabloids had a field day. The narrative was irresistible. Poor girl marries rich guy. Turns out she was richer all along, and he never knew. But the real story was darker and more complex. Journalists dug deeper. They found women who had worked for the Hastings family and had stories about Victoria's cruelty, Alexander's arrogance. They found the paper trail showing how Emma had indeed signed documents without proper legal representation, documents that any competent lawyer would have explained could make her an owner. The business press was even less forgiving. Hastings's $800 million deal nearly collapses over sloppy paperwork, wrote Bloomberg. How Alexander Hastings built an empire on his wife's signatures, wrote the Wall Street Journal. The Blackstone deal did close, barely, but Emma's 40% stake was sold separately to a private equity firm her father had connections with. She netted $340 million. The penthouse settlement added another $15 million. The art, cars, and other assets added $8 million. All told, Emma walked away from her 10-year marriage with $363 million. Alexander walked away with a tarnished reputation and a business that had lost its star deal. His relationship with Victoria, the fashion blogger, ended within weeks when she realized he was not quite as rich as she had thought. Within 6 months, 2 major clients had pulled their accounts, citing concerns about Mr. Hastings's business practices. Within a year, he had sold his company to a competitor at a significant loss. Victoria Hastings, the matriarch who had called Emma a liability, watched her son's empire crumble and could do nothing to stop it. The society pages that once celebrated her became avenues for schadenfreude. How the mighty have fallen, the Hastings family's spectacular decline, was a typical headline. Emma, meanwhile, had returned to her father's world, but on her own terms. Emma Castellano stood at the podium of the Harvard Business School auditorium, looking out at a sea of eager faces. She was here to give a guest lecture on strategic real estate investment, but she knew why the room was packed. People wanted to see the woman who had brought down Alexander Hastings. "My name is Emma Castellanos," she began. "Some of you know me as the waitress wife from the tabloids. Others know me as the woman who supposedly tricked her ex-husband out of hundreds of millions. Let me tell you the real story." She clicked to the first slide of her presentation. "I was 19 when I decided to walk away from my family's wealth. I wanted to know if I could make it on my own. I wanted to find someone who would love me for me, not for my last name. So I took my mother's maiden name, got a job, and tried to build a life. I met Alexander Hastings when I was 23. He was charming, ambitious, and he told me we would build an empire together. I believed him. For 10 years, I supported his business. I signed documents he told me were formalities. I entertained his clients. I managed his household. I did everything a partner does. And then, when he decided I was not useful anymore, he tried to throw me away with $25,000 and a suitcase." She paused, letting that sink in. What Alexander did not realize is that those formalities I had been signing, they were not formalities. His lawyers had structured deals in a way that made me a legal owner. Not because I was trying to trick him, but because he was sloppy and assumed I was too stupid to matter. When I discovered this, I had a choice. I could quietly accept the divorce and the insulting settlement, or I could fight for what was legally mine. She clicked to the next slide, a photo of the Blackstone Tower. I chose to fight, not out of revenge, though I will not lie, there was some satisfaction in it, but because I needed to prove something to myself, that I was not nothing, that my contributions mattered, that being underestimated did not mean being powerless. A student raised her hand. "Ms. Castellanos, some people say you manipulated the situation, that you deliberately hid your wealth to trap Mr. Hastings." Emma smiled. I hid my wealth because I wanted authentic love. Alexander had every opportunity to treat me as a partner, to explain what I was signing, to value my contributions. He chose not to. The law simply reflected the reality that I was a partner, whether he acknowledged it or not. Another student. What would you say to women in similar situations? Know your worth, Emma said firmly. Understand what you are signing. Don't let anyone make you feel small. And if someone treats you as disposable, she smiled, make sure they learn the cost of that mistake. The lecture continued for another hour. When it ended, students swarmed her with questions. As the crowd thinned, a young woman approached hesitantly. Ms. Castellanos, I just wanted to say, my mom went through something similar. My dad divorced her after 20 years, claimed she had contributed nothing, gave her barely anything. She did not have a secret fortune to fight back with. She just lost everything. Emma's expression softened. What's your mother's name? Sarah Chen. Emma pulled out her phone. I am starting a foundation, the Castellanos Foundation for Women's Economic Empowerment. We provide legal representation for women going through divorce who cannot afford top lawyers. We help them understand their rights, value their contributions, and fight for fair settlements. Tell your mother to contact us. The young woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you so much. After she left, Emma stood alone in the empty auditorium. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. Saw your lecture online. Clara would be proud. I am proud. Come to dinner Sunday. Emma smiled. Her mother, Clara Hayes, who had died when Emma was 17, had been the one who had taught her that strength came from knowing yourself, not from what others thought of you. It had taken a failed marriage and a spectacular divorce to fully learn that lesson, but Emma had learned it. She walked out of the building into the Cambridge afternoon. Her car, a modest Tesla, not the flashy cars Alexander had insisted she drive, was waiting. As she slid into the driver's seat, she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked different than she had 2 years ago, stronger, clearer, free. Her phone rang, unknown number. Hello? Emma, it's Alex. She froze. She had not spoken to him since the final settlement signing. What do you want, Alexander? I saw your lecture. Someone sent me the link. His voice sounded smaller than she remembered. I wanted to say, you were right about everything. I did underestimate you. I did treat you like you were worthless, and I am sorry. Emma sat in silence, processing. I lost the company, Alexander continued. Had to sell. Mother will not speak to me. She blames me for destroying the family reputation. Victoria left me the second she realized I was not rich anymore. I am living in a regular apartment now, working for someone else. It's humbling. Is that why you are calling? Emma asked. You want sympathy? No, I am calling because I finally understand what I had. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Emma. You were brilliant, capable, loyal. And I threw you away because I was too arrogant to see it. I do not expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I know what I lost. Emma thought about the woman she had been 10 years ago, young, idealistic, ready to give up everything for love. She thought about the woman she had become, strong, successful, but still learning to trust again. Thank you for saying that, Alex, she said finally. I hope you learn from this. I hope you become a better person. And us, is there any chance? No, Emma said firmly. There is no us. There never really was. You loved an idea of me, the pretty, compliant wife who made you look good. You never loved the real me because you never bothered to learn who that was. She paused. But I forgive you, not for you, for me. Because holding on to anger was making me small again, and I am done being small. Emma. Goodbye, Alexander. She hung up and sat in her car, breathing deeply. Then she texted her father, I will be at Sunday dinner. Can we talk about expanding the foundation? I have some ideas. His response came immediately. Can't wait to hear them. My brilliant daughter, the world does not know what hit it. Emma smiled and started the car. She had meetings to get to, a foundation to build, and a life to live on her own terms with her own name, and with the absolute certainty that she would never again let anyone make her feel like she was worth less than she was. The waitress wife was dead. Emma Castellanos was just getting started. The Castellanos Foundation had become one of the most powerful advocacy organizations for women's economic rights in the country. They'd represented over 3,000 women in divorce proceedings, recovered more than $800 million in fair settlements, and successfully lobbied for changes to marital property laws in 7 states. Emma sat in her corner office overlooking Manhattan, the same view Alexander had once enjoyed from his penthouse, though her building was taller and her view was better. Ironic, but satisfying. Her assistant buzzed. "Ms. Castellanos, your 3 p.m. is here. Send her in." A woman in her 40s walked in, nervous but determined. "Ms. Castellanos, I am Jennifer Morrison. I read about your foundation. I need help." Emma gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Tell me everything." Jennifer's story was familiar. 15 years of marriage to a tech entrepreneur. She had been the one managing his life while he built his company. Now he was worth $200 million and wanted a divorce. The prenup gave her $500,000. "He says I contributed nothing," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. "That I was just spending his money while he worked, but I ran his household. I raised his kids. I was his sounding board for every major decision. I introduced him to the investor who saved his company, but none of that counts because my name is not on any documents." Emma leaned forward. "Jennifer, let me ask you something. Did you ever sign anything for his company? Any authorizations, any documents he said were just formalities?" Jennifer frowned. "Well, yes, several times over the years. He said they were standard business things, that he needed my signature for tax purposes or to authorize certain accounts." Emma smiled. It was the same smile a shark might give before it strikes. "I need you to remember everything you signed, every document, every date you can recall. Because, Jennifer, there is a very good chance those were not just formalities. And if they were not, then you did not contribute nothing. You might actually own part of everything he claims is his." Jennifer's eyes widened. Is that legal?" "Not only is it legal," Emma said, "it is justice. These men think they can use us to build their empires and then discard us when we are no longer convenient. They think we will just accept whatever scraps they offer because we do not know better. But you know what? We do know better. We've learned." She pulled out a legal pad. "Let's start from the beginning. Tell me everything about your marriage, every document you remember, every contribution you made. And then we are going to show your husband the same lesson mine learned. Underestimating a woman is the most expensive mistake he will ever make." 10 years after her divorce, Emma Castellanos sat in the same Harvard auditorium where she had given her first lecture. But this time, she was not the guest speaker. She was receiving an award. The dean was at the podium. The Harvard Business School Award for Social Entrepreneurship goes to Emma Castellanos for her revolutionary work in women's economic justice. Through the Castellanos Foundation, she has not only helped thousands of women receive fair treatment in divorce proceedings, but has fundamentally changed how we think about marital contributions, unpaid labor, and economic partnership. Emma walked to the stage to thunderous applause. In the front row sat her father, now in his 70s but still sharp as ever. Next to him was her fiancé, Miguel, a public interest lawyer she had met at a foundation event, someone who knew exactly who she was and loved her anyway. As she accepted the award, Emma thought about the woman she had been at 23, so eager to prove she did not need her family's wealth, so desperate to be loved for herself that she had made herself small. She thought about the woman she had been at 33, devastated, humiliated, handed a suitcase and $25,000 as if that is all she was worth. And she thought about the woman she was now, at 43. Someone who would learn that true power came not from hiding who you were, but from embracing it fully. Someone who would turn pain into purpose and humiliation into a crusade for justice. 10 years ago, she said into the microphone, my ex-husband told me I had contributed nothing to his success, that I was worthless without his name and his money. He tried to erase a decade of partnership with a check for $25,000. She held up the award. This award is not just mine. It belongs to every woman who has been told she is worthless, every woman who has been treated as disposable, every woman who has heard you contributed nothing after years of sacrifice. To those women, I want you to know you are not nothing. Your labor has value, your contributions matter, and anyone who tries to tell you otherwise, they're not just wrong, they're about to learn a very expensive lesson. The crowd erupted. Emma smiled, thinking of all the Jennifers and Sarahs and countless other women who would sat across from her desk, devastated and lost, who would left empowered and ready to fight. Alexander Hastings had thought he was discarding a worthless wife. Instead, he had created his own nemesis, and in doing so sparked a movement. That was the real revenge, not the money, not the settlements, not even the satisfaction of watching his empire crumble. The real revenge was this. Emma had taken the pain he had inflicted and turned it into power for thousands of women who had been told they were worthless. She had taken his cruelty and made it her calling. And she was just getting started. This story is not just about one divorce. It's about every time someone tried to make you feel small. Every time someone told you that you did not matter, that you contributed nothing, that you should be grateful for scraps. Emma's story reminds us that value is not determined by who recognizes it. It's intrinsic. It exists whether others see it or not. And when someone tries to erase your worth, sometimes the best response is not begging them to see it. It is making sure the whole world does. You might not have a secret trust fund. You might not have a billionaire father, but you have something more powerful, the truth of your contributions, the documentation of your work, and the courage to demand what you are owed. Don't let anyone convince you that staying small is safer than standing tall. Don't let anyone make you believe that their inability to see your worth means you have none. If this story moved you, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to remember their own power. Subscribe for more stories of justice, resilience, and people who refuse to accept the value others placed on them. Because your worth is not up for negotiation, and the sooner you believe that, the sooner the world will too.